Voltaire said, if you want to know who controls you, look at who you are not allowed to criticize. Let's look at who we're not allowed to criticize. That would be Jews. That's not anti Semitic. That's a fact. We're not allowed to criticize Jews. Why? We can criticize everybody else because Jews control our government and Jews are using our government to commit atrocities and war crimes that amount to genocide. Reporter, we don't have America with us. USA is not a unified bloc. We have the Senate, the Congress, and a record strong Jewish lobby on our side. We have a strong influence over the general support in America. America won't force us into anything. What do we got to do to stop it? First, we have to be aware of it. Start looking into the history of Israel. This conflict didn't start in 2,000 years ago. This conflict started in 1948 when Israel started to steal Palestinian land with the consent of the United Nations through a deal worked out by politicians. And now we're actually letting them ethnically cleanse millions of people from the homes that they've had for centuries and kill tens of thousands with our weapons, civilians, innocent people. If you think October 7th was the beginning, you're years and decades late. What happened October 7th has been happening in Palestine since 1948 and before. And I can show you all this.
75 years ago, a horrific event forever changed the lives of Palestinians. In 1948, militias attacked, bombed, and massacred entire towns and cities all over Palestine, forcing nearly 75% of the Palestinian population to flee to safety, separating families and destroying entire communities. Palestinians call this the Nakba, an Arabic word that means catastrophe. Before the Nakba, Palestine was a vibrant place where Palestinians of many faiths and walks of life lived in harmony. But the militias who attacked Palestine during the Nakba wanted to drive Palestinians out so they could establish a country called Israel on land where Palestinians had been living for generations. And they were ruthless. The violent militias moved from one Palestinian town to the next, killing and traumatizing families. Israel moved strangers into their homes, destroyed hundreds of towns and cities completely, and to this day has never let Palestinians return. Imagine losing your home and everything you've ever known. Since then, Israel has continued to murder Palestinians, destroy their homes, and steal their land over and over again. The injustices Israel inflicts on Palestinians through its brutal apartheid system are the direct result of the horrific violence of the Nakba. Today, the Israeli government still has the same goal as the militias who massacred Palestinian families in 1948: to wipe Palestinians off the map, literally. The Nakba started 75 years ago, and for the millions of Palestinians who Israel won't let return, those whose homes it continues to destroy, those whose land it continues to steal, and those whose loved ones it hasn't stopped killing, it's still their reality today. Palestinians want their freedom and to live in their homeland. It's up to us to right this wrong and ensure all people, including Palestinians, can live safely in the place where they're from.
We can't let this go on. They're making fools of us. They're taking our money. Billions of dollars of our money are going to Israel, a country that has free health care and free education. And they're using that money to kill innocent people so they could steal their land. So let's step back, stop thinking with our emotions, start looking at what these people are doing and how what they're doing is taking our freedoms away by using people that they condition us to see as evil. And then it's all right because we're taking the evil person's freedom. They're taking our freedom. They're deporting people and arresting people for protesting on our campuses against a genocide in Palestine.
Anybody who is simply pro-Palestine and say, you're pro-Hamas. Those things are interchangeable to them. If you're pro-Palestine, you are pro-Hamas. So you have these massive protests on college campuses. Why? Because Israel is currently committing a genocide in Gaza. It's not really up in the air. It's not really difficult to determine what's happening. There is really no gray area at this point. That's why we have, every human rights group in the world has been screaming through a megaphone exactly what's going on. Amnesty International, for example. The UN is clear about what's going on. You have charges against Netanyahu at the International Criminal Court for the crime of genocide, right? Like, it's so clear what's happening. And so, of course, people of conscience are going to say, hey, I'm against the genocide. And also, by the way, the U.S. is arming and funding the genocide. Cut off the weapons immediately. It doesn't get any more loathsome than what we're witnessing here. There's blood on the hands of American leaders as well as the Israeli government, right? Cut off the weapons. On top of that, a lot of these protesters say, hey, any sort of investment that these universities and colleges have from Israel, reject the money. Cut it off. We don't want any connections with this genocidal regime. In the same way, I would hope that in 1939 or 1941, right, you would have people of conscience say, the Nazis are genociding Jews right now. Any investment from Nazi Germany, cut it off, right? And so, okay, look at this. Let's start here. Barnard College of Columbia University expelled 3 pro-Palestine students in less than 2 weeks, the first time in 57 years that the university has expelled anyone for protest. So we're easing into it. Here we're just talking about, they were expelled. Okay, it's going to get a lot worse. Scoop. The State Department to use AI, artificial intelligence, to revoke visas of foreign students who appear pro-Hamas. Again, I want to reiterate, to them that just means you're pro-Palestine. You took part in a protest saying, stop the Israeli genocide. That's pro-Hamas to these people. Also, as you all know, Trump repeatedly said, we're going to cut off any federal funds that any of these universities and colleges get. We are cutting off those funds unless and until you stop the illegal protests. Again, what does he mean by illegal protests? Well, right now it means any protest of Israel, we're just going to smear you and say it's pro-Hamas, and we're going to cut off the funding over that. So you need to crack down on those protests. He's investigating dozens of students for speech critical of Israel. One Palestinian student recently got a notice accusing her of discriminatory harassment. Ready for this? Her alleged offense, writing a pro-divestment op-ed in the student newspaper. So now it's discriminatory harassment and anti-Semitism to say, hey, we need to divest from Israel. Guys, moments like this is exactly why the First Amendment exists and exactly why free speech exists. Because if you let the powerful run wild, this is what they do. Anything that threatens them, anything that threatens their business interests and the money flow, right? They're like, hey, crack down on it, make it illegal, expel them. In many instances, detain them, arrest them, deport them, which leads me to the biggest part here. New York student protester held in immigration custody in Louisiana. A pro-Palestinian activist who took a lead role in last year's student protests at Columbia University in New York City is being held in immigration custody in Louisiana, records show, after he was detained over the weekend. ICE agents told Syrian-born Mahmoud Khalil they were revoking his student visa and green card when they detained him at his university-owned apartment in Manhattan on Saturday. The Department of Homeland Security claimed without evidence in a statement that the former student had led activities aligned to Hamas. Again, he was one of the organizers of the pro-Palestine protests, and they're accused, you're tied to Hamas. Total fucking bullshit. The Trump administration announced last week it was rescinding $400 million in federal grants to Columbia, accusing it of failing to fight anti-Semitism on campus. Which, by the way, this person that we're talking about here, he's a legal permanent resident he has a green card. That's a legal permanent resident. So if they can illegally detain legal permanent residents, there's nobody they wouldn't do it to. That's what I need you to understand. This isn't, it's undocumented immigrant or they're on some, they're legally here, but it's something that could easily be. It's not like temporary protected status where there's some wiggle room for the president to say we're getting rid of that temporary protected status. Legal permanent resident with a green card. They detained him. By the way, they originally said, we sent him to Elizabeth, New Jersey in an ICE facility there. Come to find out, they didn't. They had sent him, his 8-month pregnant wife went to go see him, and they were like, he's not here. They took him all the way to fucking Louisiana. And then what are you going to do? You're going to deport him? A legal permanent resident in the United States, a fucking student at Columbia. What are you going to send him back to Syria, which just got taken over by jihadists? And by the way, now we just heard they're doing massacres of Christians, innocent civilians in Syria. You're going to deport him to Syria all because he's against Israel genociding Palestinians in Gaza? Is that what you're going to do? You can detain a legal permanent resident with a green card. There's very little difference between that and a native-born American citizen. They will do anything and everything they can to protect the Israel lobby, to protect the powerful, right? And this is just the beginning, man.
But first, we have to realize Israel is not our friend. Israel is not our ally. And we have to start making people aware of it. I'm going to end this video with some highlights of the anti-Semitism laws that they're trying to instill in our legislature and our laws that would make it criminal for us to criticize Jews. Now, don't be afraid to share this. This isn't anti-Semitic. And if you don't want to have another country dictating what you can say in America, you need to start sharing it and make others aware that we're being gaslighted into silence. Here's the ones that we want to take a look at. And here's how they're trying to keep their crimes from being made public. Here's one: making mendacious, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews as such, or power of Jews as collective, such as, especially, but not exclusively, the myth about a world Jewish conspiracy or of Jews controlling the media, economy, government, and other societal institutions. Now, is that a myth? If anybody thinks that's a myth, then they believe in fairy tales. The Jews control the media. The bankers are Jews and they control the economy. The Jews control our government, and other colleges and other societal institutions, they have captured everything. And they don't want us to mention it. And this isn't hyperbole, or this isn't anti-Semitism. It's a fact. But we have to start noticing that they're having us believe ridiculous lies. Denying the fact, scope, mechanisms, for example, gas chambers, or intentionality of the genocide of the Jewish people at the hands of National Socialist Germany and its supporters and accomplices during World War II, the Holocaust. They want to shut this down because there were no gas chambers. It's proven that there were no gas chambers. It's proven that 6 million people didn't die. There's evidence to show this. There's no evidence to show the hoax that 6 million people were gassed in concentration camps. That's simply not true. But to say that, I'm going to be accused, I could be arrested for anti-Semitism. Accusing the Jews as a people or Israel as a state or inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust. This is true. They did do that. So we're not supposed, we're forbidden to say that in America? I'm forbidden to say this in America? Accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel or to the alleged priorities of Jews worldwide than to the interests of their own nations. They admit that.
But here's what Jewish people, a Jewish group, had to say about Zionism when they had a conflict. They had a problem with the way that the State Department defines anti-Semitism. Take a look at this clip.
Thank you for your question. I think we always have to pay attention to context when we're looking at any particular one incident, and we need to investigate it carefully. When we think about the State Department definition, which seeks to codify what anti-Semitism is, it's such a flawed definition that it can virtually encompass any particular act without any real regard for context, although it pretends that it does. For example, the State Department definition claims that stating that a particular Jewish person has more loyalty to the state of Israel than they do to their own country is necessarily an example of anti-Semitism. Where the truth is that that's one of the fundamental premises of Zionism. And if you go back and look at the statement, say, of Theodor Herzl, who's wrote really what's considered the founding text of Zionism, he argued very clearly that Jews are one people, and therefore it's useless for them to be patriots to the countries in which they reside. That Jews are one people, and therefore it's useless for them to be patriots to the countries in which they reside.
And right now, our Congress and our Senate is comprised mostly of Zionists or Jews. So we need to unite and stand up against this usurpation of our government. If you're not willing to stand up and call this out, Uncle Sam is pointing directly at you.